Okay, gents, match week 25 of the Premier League season is coming up. Let's preview it. Let's give some predictions. Nick Mendola, let's get straight into it and start at the top of the table. We have Brentford hosting Premier League leaders Liverpool. What are you expecting down in West London?
I don't know. I don't know. Brentford is, they make me angry. They're fun to watch and they're talented, and I'm not mad at them per se. I think Thomas Frank is probably the best hope Liverpool could have to replace Jurgen Klopp. But I just don't know what I'm getting from them. I never know what I'm getting from them. Even with Ivan Toney back, there could be style there. They could completely forget to defend. They could completely forget what they're supposed to be doing back there. Or occasionally, a Ben Mee-led back line looks impenetrable. So it's very difficult for me, especially at home, to predict this Brentford team. But I think Liverpool's still mad. I think they're still mad from the Arsenal game, and I'm kind of riding with them right now.
Yeah, I'd probably go 2-1 Liverpool. But I think you brought up a great point there. This is almost like an audition, right, for Thomas Frank. If they, Brentford come out and play really well here, I think it gives Liverpool's hierarchy a lot to think about, because you've been big on Thomas Frank, me too. I think stylistically, from a character point of view, would almost be the perfect or too perfect a replacement for Jurgen Klopp at Anfield. But Andy, he likes Brentford. That's got a place close to his heart. So I know we're breaking his heart right now mentioning Thomas Frank leaving Brentford. But I just think they'll cause Liverpool some problems from set pieces. But I expect Liverpool on the counter-attack a little bit, with Brentford commit bodies forward and really have a go at teams. I just think Diaz, Nunez, a lot of those players are going to have one chance too many and probably just edge it for Liverpool at Brentford. Andy, coming to you, Man City against Chelsea. We talked about it a little bit earlier on this week about how, in theory, this is an easy win for City, but Chelsea caused them problems in the return game earlier this season. So what are you expecting in this one? Because no one knows what to expect from Chelsea, do they?
Yeah, I don't think we quite know what to expect from Chelsea at the moment, but I think we're starting to understand what to expect this time of year from Manchester City, and this is what they do every single season, and they've survived the injury to De Bruyne on the opening day. They survived 6 or 8 weeks without Haaland. They're kind of in the middle of the season. They picked up the results that they needed and to put themselves in this position going forward, where they are now pretty overwhelmingly title favorites once again. And Chelsea, where they are at under Pochettino and the progression of that project, has not really had any progress this season because of all of the injuries that they have had. And so I just kind of look at them as a team in preseason, the first month or two of the new campaign under a new manager. And we know what that looks like. It's a lot of kinks to work out. It's a lot of problems to solve. It's a lot of things to teach to some really, really incredibly talented but young and inexperienced, especially at this level, especially playing against Manchester City in a big game like this. You can probably guess which way I'm leaning with this one. I'll go 3-1 to Manchester City, and I think it's maybe not the start, but it's a real jumping off point, I think, for them and what they're going to do down the stretch of the rest of the campaign.
Yeah, that's a fair score prediction, I think. But I could see Chelsea maybe nicking a draw on the counter, something like that, with the quality they have. But we'll wait and see what happens. And then the other title contender in action is Arsenal. They're heading to Burnley. Again, seems like another straightforward win for the Gunners, of firing on all cylinders after that big win away at West Ham. I was there at the London Stadium for that game. I talked to you guys about it before, the calmness, the confidence about this young Arsenal team now that they've already have one title push under their belt from last season. Obviously, we know how that ended, crumbled at the end, but this seems very different now. And I think they're going to take care of Burnley. I really think Declan Rice adds so much defensive solidity. Saka's in his best form of the season, in a great run of 5 goals in his last 5 Premier League games. Odegaard's pulling the string. Nick mentioned it earlier. Trossard is kind of dropping in, and Havertz as well are just causing teams problems that they didn't think they would have against Arsenal. And the movement's great. And set pieces, they're just really dominant from set pieces. And I think James Trafford's probably going to have a quite tough afternoon against Arsenal, whipping in corners on top of him there, and that could be a weakness that Arsenal could exploit. And Burnley played well away at Liverpool last weekend, maybe a bit unlucky, but that's kind of the story of their season. I feel like when we think about Burnley, played well, nice guys, try hard, but they just don't have that clinical edge right now as a first-year team back in the Premier League under Vincent Kompany, and they need something to happen quickly for them with 7 points from safety heading into this final 14 games of the season. So they can still do it. They can still stay up. But I don't think this game is going to define whether they stay in the Premier League or not. And I'm going to go for a 3-1 win for Arsenal, and it'll be pretty comfortable for the Gunners. But look at them to rotate maybe a few of their players as well ahead of the Champions League last 16 against Porto coming up next week. European spots. I'm going to come back to you, Andy Edwards, for this one. Spurs against Wolves. Spurs having a lot of players back from international duty. Son's back. Beat Brighton late on last time. Snatched the win, I'd probably say, but they're just finding a way to do it right now. So Wolves will be interesting, and there will be revenge in the air after the reverse result earlier in the season.
Son's back. Madison's back. Basuma's back. Pap Sarr is back. The Spurs players that really starred to begin the season and gave Spurs fans and a lot of hope for this season, they're all back. And the final 20 minutes or so of that game against Brighton, it's chaos. Like, chaos is Spurs' best weapon, I think, this season, because they clearly are a couple transfer windows away from having the players that Postecoglou wants to really fit and play his system correctly, from just having the level and quality of players I think is required to go where he wants to take the club. But there is enough quality in this team that in moments when the game is decided, they have game winners, and that's something that I think, outside of Kane and Son, they probably have not had for a few years. And we're starting to see other individuals, and Richarlison especially, step up and take on more of a goal-scoring role, and that's exciting because he costs a lot of money, and Spurs have that big hole at the center forward position. And so if he's able to lead the line, and Son can kind of be that secondary guy coming from the line just behind him, I really like what Spurs could do down the stretch. I think they're going to have their hands full with Wolves, though, in this one, because Wolves match up incredibly well. They take away a lot of the things that Spurs do well, and they counterattack very, very, very well. And I know Mickey Van de Ven can wipe out a lot of counterattacks back there on his own, but I think it's going to be him versus two, him versus three, rather than one-on-one in open space this time. So I think this is actually going to be an incredibly entertaining game, and probably ends 3-2.
Wow.
I'll say Spurs, but it's gonna be a coin flip in the end, I think.
Wow. I'm just going to say, Andy, looking at their schedule, good run of games for Spurs coming up now, between now and the end of April, where they play all of the top three back to back. So maybe Spurs will be back in the title race by that point, and we'll see what happens then. Nick, your Newcastle United host Bournemouth. Thoughts on that?
I like it. I'll tell you why. Newcastle, unfortunately, under Eddie Howe, has a bit of a stubborn streak. But one of the things that works for them is they like to avenge things. They like to be in that underdog role. We saw it when they got to face Forest last week after losing to them earlier, and the same thing happened with Bournemouth before. I also think his stubborn streak is what keeps putting Dan Burn at left back, but Bournemouth's a team that doesn't supply that sort of super shifty, scary guy there. They have speed guys, but they're guys that he can stay with. So I don't see anything really getting in the way of this team against lower half sides when Sven Botman's healthy, when Bruno Guimaraes is healthy. I know they still don't have Isak back, but I think Newcastle's kind of primed for a purple patch, if you will. And sneaky high five, by the way, to Kieran Trippier, who is leading the league, tied for the league lead in assists. Coming out of a right back, purely crossing and set piece position has been impressive, even though he hasn't had his best year defending. So I like Newcastle this week.
Cool. Maybe 2-3-0 maybe against Bournemouth?
7 or 8 to -1. I mean, we'll see what happens.
Fair enough. Yeah, they're doing all right, and they can actually push for the top 6 late in the season and get back into Europe, it seems, the way they're trending right now. And Bournemouth struggling a little bit. Not too worried about them getting dragged into the relegation scrap, but they have had a bit of a dip in the last few weeks. So let's wait and see what happens with them. Talking about a bit of a dip, both Villa and Fulham have had that. Fulham obviously got the big win they needed last weekend, but Villa massively slumping. Andy Edwards, I tipped them to maybe be in the title race. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case, but still, though they're slumping, top 4 situation for Villa to be involved in that is a huge step forward this season. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw in this game. But quickly, your thoughts on Villa? Can they sort of recover towards the end of the season?
They're losing a lot of players who are very, very important to the way that they play. And Boubacar Kamara picking up torn ACL this week, it puts so much pressure on the rest of that midfield. And for all the great things that John McGinn does and all the industry that he brings, protecting that back line, I think, is really, really important to Unai Emery's system. And we've seen that throughout his career. And I fear for them a little bit down the stretch. Obviously, they're going to finish on the top half of the table, probably top 8, and they've still got enough talent to squeak out some results. But I don't think it's going to be as free-flowing and beautiful the way that it has been at points this season.
Nick, when we look at Luton against Manchester United, obviously the upset alert sirens going off in my head, but Man United have kind of regained some composure, I think would be the best way to say, with these wins, and Rasmus Højlund, or Rock and Roll Rasmus, as Peter Drury called him over the last weekend, scoring goals and looking confident. That's an X factor for them. They haven't had that all season long. And Casemiro, Varane, Luke Shaw, Maguire, players coming back with a lot of experience just to get United back in this top 4 conversation. Do you expect them to slip up at Luton?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But again, I've just stopped expecting consistency from them. There is a lot of hope, though, this time. I won't be fooled until next year. I'm not going to tell you with authority that they're going to win any game until at least next year, but I will say there is a lot of hope there, and I think there's reason. I mean, Højlund looks very, very good, and the one thing that is kind of slipped very much under the radar, and I know that that's a cliche thing to say, but I think you'll believe me, there is really no one in the league doing a key passes for 90 the way that Bruno Fernandes is. And I think because he's not scoring a lot of goals, and because there's a center forward there, he's been asked to do a different role, and he hasn't gotten a lot from his wings until recently. This is one of the very best players the Premier League has to offer, and I think he's kind of due for a star turn, and it may happen here.
Yeah, it may do. Luton have just lost a little bit of steam, had a great run. No matter where they finish in the Premier League this season, they've had a great first season in the Premier League, but it feels like this is a 3-1 Man United win, something like that, and they'll get a lot of chances on the counter-attack, which suits them very well. We focus on some of the strugglers. Sheffield United against Brighton. I mean, Sheffield United gave themselves a chance now after beating Luton last time out, but I think Brighton just match up very well against them. They will press them and hound them, and I just don't feel like Sheffield United have a lot of confidence at home in front of their fans, given some of the batterings they've taken. So I feel like Brighton is not the team you want to play in that situation. And a hungry Brighton as well, with the defeat the way they had that at Tottenham last time out. Deserve more than that, but having Matoma back is huge for them. Pascal Gross has been excellent. And I'm going to see a pretty easy 2 or 3-0 win for Brighton in that one. Andy, Nottingham Forest against West Ham. We know West Ham are under pressure. David Moyes' situation, contract up at the end of the season. The battering they had at Arsenal. But Forest, I mean, they got that potential points deduction hanging over their head. Lost 3 of the last 4. They lost a lot of players to international duty, so they'll get them back for this game. That could be something that gives Nuno some more defensive structure, which he loves and he really needs from this Forest team to kick on, right?
Yeah, his debut, I think it was the debut for Forest, is gonna really stick out in the memory as well. That doesn't match anything that I ever saw or expected from Nottingham Forest and Nuno Espirito Santo either. Yeah, West Ham winless in 7 in all competitions, 5 of them in the Premier League. This is a team that a couple months ago we were talking about. Could they push into the top 4 race? Because they were picking up results at a really incredible rate and some impressive results. And they've had a couple of injuries. Jared Bowen's been in and out of the team, and it's just not looked quite the same. And you know, it's easy to point to the manager, but I do wonder just at what point does the system and style no longer suit the squad of players that they have, but just can take them no further. I think maybe, and you just need something a little bit more progressive and a little bit more full of ideas. And that's not to say that David Moyes doesn't still have a place in the game. I just don't think it's with a team that aspires to compete for the top 6 or maybe even push for the top 4 on a regular year-by-year basis. I think this is an even one this week, and I'll say 1-1. I think Forest are going to come out and they're going going to fight. I think down the stretch. We've seen them drop a lot of games of late, but I don't think we've seen them quit in any of them, and I think that's the one saving grace for them.
Yeah, I mean, West Ham have missed Lucas Paqueta massively, right? So it's like there's creativity there. And Forest, let's see if Gio Reyna can make a bit of a run down the stretch here and give them some creativity they need in attack for Alanga, Hudson-Odoi, and others. And finishing up, gents, Everton against Crystal Palace. This is a massive game in the relegation scrap down there. Nick Mendola probably would favour Everton. I think they've actually played pretty well in recent weeks, even though they've not been getting wins. But at home against Palace, who are really struggling for confidence, and obviously a lot of rumours and reports around their managerial situation right now, probably would favour the Toffees in this one.
Yeah, and we certainly hope Roy Hodgson, should he be ill, that he gets better. He's a legend of the game, but I think the uncertainty there, going to a Goodison Park and a Toffees team that I think has been better. Honestly, they are a functioning Dominic Calvert-Lewin away from being a lot more comfortable on the table. They haven't got finishing, but you've seen them play some decent football, and Dyche has them lined up pretty well. I mean, you guys know I'm a big fan of his as well. So I think this does tilt to Everton, but there really is no underscoring how big this game could be for that relegation picture.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. So it's going to be a good weekend as well. Matchweek 25, we previewed it. We gave our predictions for all 10 games. Nick and Andy, thanks so much for joining me. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for everything you need ahead of what should be another incredible weekend in the Premier League.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock. And be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you there.